2, 3. Commissioner Yang. And help me out if I'm missing. I have a long list here, so I don't know if I see any of the other Complete Streets commissioners.
Did you call? Yep, the vice chair.
Okay.
Vice Chair Venkataraman is on as well.
Yeah, I see that now. And I just saw Commissioner Merrick join. So looks like, let's quickly rename, and I think we have a quorum, but we'll officially start the meeting and then do the quorum, and we'll do a roll call just to get that on record. So give me one sec. Since this is a joint meeting where we've sort of invited the Complete Streets Commission to the Planning Commission, Vice Chair Messinger will kind of oversee the whole meeting, but Chair Banerjee will preside over the Complete Streets Commission during their deliberations and vote.
Yeah, and we'll be handling it like the other ones where the Complete Streets there's going to be the staff report, Complete Streets questions of staff, and then Planning Commission question of staff, you know, how we rotated it before. And then here the applicant, you know, we'll give the staff report, then the applicant. And in this case, since there's 2 commissions, the norms say 10 minutes for the applicant, but we decided since it's 2 commissions, the applicant would get 15 minutes and a 5-minute rebuttal. So we were trying to make that fair because I guess technically they could have up to 20 with each commission, but anyway, and that's just how it's going to go today. And then Steve, is there anything else we need to update people on?
No, I don't think so. Again, for members of the public, we will open public comment, and at that time we'll ask you if you can use a hand raise in the virtual meeting. That will just give us an opportunity to keep the comments orderly, and we can set a time limit properly. And if you can't find a way to raise your hand at some point, we'll also say anybody that can unmute themselves will be able to speak at that time. So we appreciate your patience and keeping this virtual meeting organized. So with that, I can start
Steve,
recording.
Sorry, before we start the official meeting, may I also ask Jolie the question about what we were trying to find out earlier today? Is, Jolie, our understanding is that the commission handbook doesn't have guidelines around joint meetings with respect to when the commissions finish the deliberations, because I think Steve said that overall we're at the Planning Commission slot tonight. Can I think last time, and Guido's not here anymore, we've only done one of these joint meetings, our commission sort of recused ourselves after we finished our vote and turned the meeting back to the Planning Commission. Is that something, given that we don't have norms for this, that should be allowed, or are we asking folks or requiring folks to stick around?
Are you asking me if you can go home afterwards? I would say yes, you can turn off your screen. You've done your job. You've deliberated, you've made your recommendation, and then it goes to the Planning Commission and they will deliberate and make their recommendation. So once you've done your job, there's no other business tonight. So you could, you could leave.
Okay. And commissioners would certainly be welcome to stay and listen to the Planning Commission deliberation, but I think our job is done. So if the Complete Streets commissioners choose to go, they could do that as well.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you for that confirmation. And I think Steve had a good idea, is maybe next time that the commission handbook is updated, we should just add that clarity in there.
Yes, because you know, with SB 330, we're going to have these combined meetings going forward. And the other thing with SB 330, if we don't want to open a meeting and continue it, because that's counted as a meeting. So that's why certain times things get pulled from the agenda, because we don't want to waste a public hearing, you know, with these 5 hearing limits.
Okay, with that said, I'll start the recording.
Is chat turned off?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And sorry, it's
Recording in progress.
okay. So Vice Chair, if you would like to start the meeting.
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. And Steve, could you do a roll call of the Planning Commission to establish a quorum?
Sure. Commissioner Steinle,
Here.
Commissioner Roche,
Here.
Commissioner Doran, she's absent. Commissioner Ahi,
Here.
Commissioner Bodnar,
Here.
Vice Chair Messinger,
Present.
and Commissioner Merrick.
Here.
We have a quorum for the Planning Commission.
Steve, do we let the Complete Streets do their quorum now, or do we just go ahead and move into our consent calendar and ask for public comments?
No, we should do a roll call for the Complete Streets. Whatever the norms that you would like, if you want me to call off the names or if the chair would like to call off the names, either way is fine.
Either way, Steve, is fine.
Go ahead if you would like to.
Okay, it doesn't matter, but in no particular order. Commissioner Katz. Can we have a verbal, please? I see you.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Maloof.
Present. Here.
Commissioner Snyder. Commissioner Snyder is absent this evening. Commissioner Yang.
Here.
Commissioner Ambiel. Commissioner Ambiel is also absent this evening. And Vice Chair Venkatraman.
Present.
And myself, the Chair Banerjee, present. So we have a quorum of 5 members present, 2 members absent.
Thank you.
Okay, so Steve, I'm going to move on to comments from the public on matters not on the agenda.
Yeah, so again, if there's anybody on this virtual meeting or has called in, if you have a public comment at this time for items not on the agenda, please raise your hand or unmute yourself, and please state your name, although you don't have to provide your name. It just helps us with the meeting minutes. So if you do have a public comment, again, please raise your hand or unmute yourself. I don't hear anybody at the moment, and I don't see any hands raised either.
So should we turn it over to the Complete Streets Commission to do the same?
No, just the one public
Just the one?
comment section is just fine.
Okay. Then for the Planning Commission, I'd like us to approve the minutes as part of our consent calendar from the meeting of July 21st. Do I have someone to move for that in a second?
I'll move to that.
I'll second.
Okay, Steve, if you could do a roll call, that would be great.
All right, just trying to type some notes. Commissioner Steinle,
Yes.
Commissioner Roche,
Yes.
Commissioner Ahi,
Yes.
Commissioner Bodnar,
Yes.
Vice Chair Menzinger,
Yes.
and Commissioner Merrick.
Yes.
That passes 6-0.
Okay. Does the Complete Streets have a similar item, or are we just going to jump into the public hearing now?
No, the next item would be the public hearing.
Okay. So just to remind, as Steve laid out the way the presentations go for a public hearing, we first will have a staff presentation. And then questions by both the Complete Streets Commission and the Planning Commission to staff, just questions, not comments. And then the applicant will do a presentation. Again, the Complete Streets and the Planning Commission can ask questions. Then there will be time for public comments. Then the applicant has time to make a rebuttal if they choose to. And then each of our commissions we'll close the public hearing and we'll give our comments and move to a vote if that's appropriate. Can I lay that out right, Steve?
I believe you did.
Okay, so let's open the public hearing on 330 Distal, and I think it's staff time.
Yeah, so for the staff presentation, Radha Hayagriv is here to represent the city. So I'll turn it over to Radha, who will give a brief presentation and then followed by your questions.
Thanks, Steve. I'm going to share screen and go off video because my computer freezes. Good evening, commissioners. Let me know if you can see my screen. I'm starting slideshow.
We see it.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Radha Hayagriv. I'm really excited to present to you the city's first affordable housing project at 330 Distill Circle. The project, as described by City Attorney Jolie, it is an SB 330 project. The intention of this, to meet the overall cap of 5 public meetings, staff is conducting a joint hearing to discuss the multimodal transportation review, along with the design review and CUP. I will be providing an overview of the proposed project, followed by a presentation by the architect and applicant team. We have in the call environmental consultants, including the transportation consultants, to answer any technical questions. The project site is approximately a 0.87 acre lot located at 330 Distill Circle. The site is designated general plan. Designation is thoroughfare commercial, and the zoning is commercial thoroughfare. The site is currently developed with an approximately 12,000 square foot single-story office building with a perimeter landscaping, including 27 trees and surface parking lot. This proposed residential project would demolish the existing office building. It would remove 19 of the 23 trees, and it would preserve 8 trees, and it would remove the surface parking lot to construct the new building and associated improvements. The new multifamily residential development that you see, this 3D is looking out from Distill Circle out to El Camino Real at the far right. The proposal is for 90 for-rent condominium units, 88 of which are at 100% affordable housing, with 2 units at manager units are at market rate. The height of the building is 64.5 feet tall. It's 5 stories tall. It has first floor amenities and parking. It's got a common open space in the rear. And the project applicant is seeking 4 concessions and 3 waivers. Sorry for the typo. The first floor or the ground floor is comprised of only the common building amenities. It has no residential units. However, this is built with mass timber construction. The parking will be provided at the ground level in a podium parking garage. The parking consists of 90 parking spaces. 8 of them are at grade, and 82 of them are stacked parking that you see at the top of the slide. The ground floor also contains common amenity spaces, tenant administrative offices, tenant co-working spaces, trash collection, sorting room, a bike locker room, and I'll go into the details as we go forth into the presentation. The upper floors, the second floor has the common open space courtyard. I'd like to leave most of the design iterations and discussion to the applicants. I'm going to give you a quick overview and focus on the density bonus and the multimodal transportation details. As you can see here, the upper floors are constructed over the mass timber base, and the The units are basically a modular unit system. They will be manufactured off-site and assembled on-site. The upper 4 floors consists of a total of the 90 proposed units. The unit distribution is across studios, 1 beds, 2 beds, and 3 bedroom units. The applicant has been working with the city since January of 2021. They have conducted 6 community meetings from January through September of last year. Earlier this year, in January 2022, the applicant presented to a joint study session to the Planning Commission and City Council for City of Los Altos, and they formally submitted in March. They are seeking design review and conditional use permit. The first public hearing was in March, where the City Council approved an exemption to the story pole installation. This is the second meeting, second public hearing. I want to bring the attention to the project's framework, because at least 20% of the 90 units in the project would provide housing for those households with below 60% AMI. And I'll get into the breakdown of these details. The city can't deny the project or approve it or conditionally approve it in such a way that would make the project infeasible for housing at the levels of affordability proposed. This is to be in conformance with the Housing Accountability Act. And there are a series of findings that can be made in order for the city to go down that path. Staff has made detailed reviews of these findings in the staff report, but I'll just give you an overview from 1 through 5 as we see it on the screen. At this point, finding number 1 can't be made because the city has not met its RENA goals. It's not met its RENA targets for the current housing cycle at the affordability levels. The city is not imposing any condition of approval, or it does not recommend denial of this project, rendering it infeasible. The project is not an agricultural land. It is an urban infill site. It is surrounded by urban land uses. It has existing functional facility with adequate water and wastewater systems and services. The project site does not have any specific adverse or unmitigated impact on public health. The project will be considered as a Class 32 categorical exemption pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. There is no specific unmitigated or adverse impact on the public health and safety as a result of the proposed project. And the project is consistent with the zoning ordinance and applicable general plan land use designation. The city has a certified housing element at this point, and it is currently updating the housing element in the 6th cycle. And the public available draft does not identify the project as a housing opportunity site. And so because these findings can't be made, we are recommending approval of the 90-unit proposed project in front of us. I want to dial down into what is allowable under the density bonus law for affordable housing projects like these within half mile of a major transit stop. I must point your attention to the density bonus law references for the public for the definition of the major transit stop is a little bit of a tiered reference system, wherein it references a public resource code, and that references another code. And the details of those codes are available in the staff report, but the summary of this entire exercise is that based on the combination of the definitions, what you see in the map here highlighted in yellow for El Camino and Showers, the El Camino and Showers stop it can be qualified as a major transit stop, and it is inclusive of both the definitions of the intersection of 2 or major bus routes with a frequency of 15-minute intervals at peak commute periods, and it's also meeting the definition of it being a bus rapid transit station. And I have more detailed slides when we talk about it going down the presentation. But the overall goal of this, what you see here is an MTC map, which points out to that stop being a qualifiable major transit stop. And this, because of the major transit stop and the distance of the stop being within half mile of this project, and the fact that the project is proposing all the units at affordable housing, affordable levels, it entitles the project for various eligibilities for density bonus, development incentives, and things like that. And for outside of the affordable housing project, this parcel that we were looking at is in the commercial thoroughfare district, and the density would allow the project to build a maximum of 33 units at the density of 38 dwelling units per acre. But since it is proposing a 100% affordable housing project, it is located within half mile of the transit stop. It's eligible for, there is no maximum density limitations pursuant to the density bonus law, and it's also eligible for height increases for up to 3 stories or 33 feet. And because it is so close to a major transit stop, they're not required to provide parking in general. So these are the major 3 criteria that the project is eligible for. In addition to that, it also is eligible for additional concessions and waivers. The 90 units that are proposed are divided, as you see in the table here. As you can see, the manager's units are the 2 manager units, or the 2% is at market rate, and everything else, the 88 units, are either falling under low income or 80% AMI, or very low income or 50% AMI, or extremely low income categories as it is proposed and as we review it today. In addition to the eligibilities of the no parking and the increased height, when the concessions that the project seeks for it to pencil out and to provide the 100% affordable units, the 4 development concessions that the applicant is seeking is in front of you. The front setback, the private open space requirement, the design control, building mass and articulation for upper story step back, and reduction of the local reach codes for EV charging. And I don't want to go into the details of the concessions because we have a lot of ground to cover within the next 10-15 minutes. The details are available in attachment D and D1 in the density bonus report of tonight's packet, and we can answer questions after this presentation. In summary, the concessions requested are something that the project are entitled to because they provide 100% affordable units, and staff is supporting these concessions. In addition to the concessions, the applicant is also requesting 3 waivers that are necessary for the project as proposed. Because the project is a 100% affordable project, the 3 waivers that you see here, design control requirements for partial visibility of the courtyard, which is waiver number 1. The proposed project has raised the courtyard to level 2. It's not visible from the street, and so they request a waiver for that design standard. The other design standard is to help is for the council to approve use of wood as a distinct material. That's waiver number 2. And there's a partial request for complying with CT access and screening of refuse collection. Although the project is storing, collecting, and managing the refuse within the project site, they're requesting that the pickup and the service staging area could be on the public right of way temporarily on the days of service. So that's waiver number 3. And the project, since this is the first affordable housing project for the city, exclusive of the manager's unit, and a majority, that is 63% of the units, are at very low income and extremely low income households. And because the city is a co-sponsor of the project, this project will also help meet the RENA allocation targets for multiple affordability levels. Staff recommends granting these optional waivers as we move forward with the project approvals. I want to talk about the parking. We touched upon the location of the project being within half-mile of the major transit stop, and it has an unobstructed access to the stop of El Camino and Showers. So this allows the project, this basically grants the project to not require any parking whatsoever. But the applicant, based on all the community feedback they have heard in 2021, they propose 90 parking spaces, as you can see in the project plans. And this parking is allowed allowed to exist within this proposed project. It makes the project better, and that is the discussion on the required number of parkings versus what the project is actually proposing. As part of this is particularly for the interest of the Planning Commission, and what findings that the City Council needs to make in order to pencil this project at the time of approval. The findings that are summarized in this project are the ones that the staff makes detailed discussion and explanations in the report. To just summarizes, staff finds the project it's in compliance with all the required findings for design review. It meets the general plan, it meets the zoning and objective standards with the requested concessions and waivers. The project has architectural integrity and it has appropriate relationship with the structures in the neighborhood. The building mass is articulated to human scale, both horizontally and vertically, and the materials that they've proposed are of high quality. The landscaping is generous. Streetscape include a good tree canopy along the project frontage and right-of-way. Signage that they show in the 3D are complementary, and mechanical equipment is in the rooftop. It is set in and it is well screened. And the service, trash, and utility collection is adequately screened. For these findings can be made by staff, and we support, and it is in compliance and can be approved. Conditional use permit findings are in the CT district. An affordable housing project is a conditional use, and it is desirable, and it is in the location along El Camino Real, which is the location is in accordance with the general plan zoning district and the required standards. It will not be detrimental to the health, safety, comfort, and the welfare of the people residing, and it is not going to be injurious to the property or improvements in the vicinity. And it complies in generally, and staff can make these findings, and I wanted to bring that to your attention to make the recommendation to the City Council. I want to talk, this is specifically for the Complete Streets Commission. Regarding the transportation impact analysis, the circulation element in the general plan includes implementing program C7 and C8, which outlines the criteria for reviewing traffic and circulation impact for new development. I'll go into the details in the next couple of slides for the Complete Streets analysis and the transportation analysis. City of Los Altos has not yet adopted the VMT policy, and this project was reviewed under both the current interim policy that the staff has been reviewing, and also the draft VMT standards that is currently available. In both the cases, the project has been screened out from additional VMT analysis. Page 29 of the agenda report has more details, and the traffic attachment B1 has detailed transportation analysis recommendations, and the consultants are here in the call to answer any technical questions. Regarding the bicycle parking, the project is providing 45 class 1 bike lockers, whereas 35 are required per the standards. It's also proposing 10 class 2 bicycle racks along the street frontage. The required is 6 class 2 bicycle parking spaces. And staff is recommending to include to the applicant to include electrical outlets to facilitate e-bikes in the bike locker room. And I recommend that the commission allow and make a motion to include the condition of approval to allow for these electrical outlets to be installed in the bike locker room. This was the map that I pulled out of the transportation analysis. As we discussed earlier, what you see on the left side of your screen with the yellow star is the El Camino and Showers bus stop. This one, the bus stop is located 0.4 miles away from the subject site. And you can see the several bus transit lines and the community shuttle lines going. And like I mentioned earlier, the Rapid 522, the bus 22 lines go from Palo Alto Transit Center to East Ridge. And there's also local bus 40 and 21 at the on the map. And Mountain View Community Shuttle actually reaches just outside of the project site near at Distal at some points. And so this is the overview of the public transit around the project site. And so the staff recommendation there's another recommendation that's coming to the project from the transportation analysis, wherein on-street parking is recommended to be prohibited in front of the project frontage outside the drive entrance. It would provide adequate sight distances. Another recommendation was that the minimum 7 feet deep parking pits would be provided to accommodate the height of the vehicle in that mechanical stacking parking solutions, and that the applicant should work with city and the Mission Trail water waste system to design a plan for the waste collection services. And staff has included a condition of approval in the draft resolution for the same. We support the recommendation from the transportation analysis. Another recommendation comes to the project from Public Works, where the request is to remove and replace the sidewalk along Distal Circle, along with some improvements along the street for Distal Circle. The request, staff recommends that the Complete Streets Commission make a motion to include a language that specifies that the improvements be along the project frontage, and we'll get into that when we get to the next slides. Overall, the project environmental consultants have prepared a detailed study and analysis and made findings to support categorical exemptions for environmental review. It's a class 32 infill exemption pursuant to the Vpa Guidelines. A notice of exemption has been prepared and is being referenced in attachment B of the staff packet. We recommend that the Complete Streets Commission recommend approval to the City Council to approve the multimodal transportation requirement for the project, and also include the motion where we can add the condition of approval for electrical outlets in the bike locker room, and the changes to the conditions for the COAs from Public Works. We recommend to the Planning Commission to approve the project to the city, recommend approval to the City Council, and also recommend approval to consider the class 32 infill exemption. And that's it from my side. I'm sorry for the long verbal and lots of text and tables. This has been I thank you for your time with this discussion and analysis and the big review packet. I'm going to be handing out this presentation to the applicant for them to present to all of you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll turn it over to the Complete Streets for their questions. of staff, of the staff report.
Thank you very much for that opportunity. I'm going to ask if commissioners have any questions. Complete Streets commissioners. Commissioner Maloof, I see you nodding your head. Commissioner Maloof, did you have a question?
Yes, I do actually.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Radha. Can you please give some more color on this parking restriction? 40 feet to the north, to the south, and 35 feet to the north. What is the logic behind it, and how did we come up with that distance?
Thank you for your question, Commissioner. I'd like to call Christy and Michelle Hunt, who's our transportation consultants. They would be in a better position to explain the technicality. I can tell you that the driveway into Distal Circle is a sharp 90 into the project itself. It is a single driveway point with entry and exit along the same side. And so within the description in the transportation analysis was to allow more visibility on both sides and for drivers to turn in and out of the project. And I think we have Michelle Hunt here or Christy here to probably answer it in a technical manner. And you just need to unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah.
Yes, you are. We can hear you.
Okay. I'm Michelle Hunt. I'm with Hexagon Transportation Consultants. And whenever we look at a new project, we look at the driveways and the visibility at the driveways to ensure that there's a safe sight distance, to ensure that vehicles can see oncoming traffic and aren't pulling out when it's not safe to do so. And in this case, the on-street parking that is currently permitted right up to the driveway would infringe upon the visibility of drivers exiting the site if there was a vehicle parked right adjacent to the driveway. And so we just basically do a sort of little straight line calculation to show from where the driver's eye would be at the driveway to the distance that they need to be able to see out onto the street. And that distance depends upon the speed limit of the street. And so that's how we came up with the distances.
Any other questions, Commissioner Maloof?
Yes, thank you,
please
Michelle.
go ahead with all your questions. Yeah.
So where do you expect the overflow parking to go?
We don't expect that there will be overflow parking based on the ITEs, the data that's available in the ITE trip generation manual. Based on the ITE average parking rate for affordable housing, the peak parking demand would be 89 vehicles. And so they're proposing 90 stalls. So that would be accommodated on site. Also, we have collected data for affordable housing projects in this area that shows even lower parking utilization. So we think that there will be sufficient parking. But in any case, our study also did do a survey of the usage of on-street parking in the vicinity, as well as the usage of some lots in the properties adjacent to it. But we found that on Distal Circle, the existing on-street parking spaces are at the maximum about 60% occupied. That was at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And so that still leaves about 30 spaces, room for about 30 vehicles to park on the street during the day. But residential developments such as this
generally need the most parking at night when all the residents have returned back home. And at night, there was only about 6 vehicles parked on Distal Circle when we went out there at midnight and did an observation. So there should be plenty of available on-street parking.
Okay, and my last question is,
Apologize. Sorry to interject. This is Damien, one of the residents. Can I speak?
This
really
is
quickly?
this is not the time for public comment. So if you can reserve yourself from speaking, and we'll take public comment at the right time. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
and my last question is, were there any considerations for specific bike lanes on Distal Circle, or perhaps even around to Distal itself, Distal Drive itself? Would that be something that the project has looked into, specifically considering that you're allowing for 45 plus 50, potentially 50 bike slots in the project?
We did look at the existing bike and ped facilities and describe those in our report. I don't recall there being any identification of bike lanes on Distal Circle in the city's plan. Please correct me, it's been a while since I looked at it. We did look at where the city has identified the desire to add improvements, but there needs to be strict nexus requirements to require the project to implement those any improvements like that. And I don't think that there was concluded that there was any nexus to require them to do such improvement.
Thank you. No further.
So, and I'm going to add on, this is Director Zorn's for development services. That is accurate. This is not an identified area to be able to require the specifics of an improvement for a bicycle lane. That's something that the city would need to amend its bicycle transportation plan in order to be able to require that for this sort of project. I also want to cover for the entire commissions, both that you are aware, this is a density bonus project. We are not allowed to legally require them to provide additional parking above and beyond for quote unquote guest parking or overflow parking. This parking or project rather actually does not have to provide any parking on site. So they are actually providing an extreme surplus than what they are legally required and what we are legally required to ask of them. So I do want to just point those two things out for both commissions to make sure that they keep in mind during their decision-making process.
Jerry, you're muted.
Thank you. So thank you, Director, and thank you, Commissioner Maloof, for the succinctness of your questions. I would ask that all commissioners on the Complete Streets Commission, since we're at a joint meeting this evening, keep your questions very succinct. Commissioner Katz, you are next.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. Just a follow-up on the parking. I think it's terrific that the developer is adding the 90 parking spaces, even though they're not.
Commissioner Katz, sorry to interrupt you. I'll just remind you, this is the time for questions. So if you can ask your question, we'll come back to deliberation.
My question is there any, will there be any of those parking places, or how many of them would have electric charging stations?
So I can answer that pretty quickly. So what the applicant is requesting as part of their density bonus concession is to allow a exception to the city's reach code requirements, which is a city amendment to the state green building standards. So they would still have to install EV charging facilities per the green building standards. And under the current green building standards, that would be a minimum of I believe, 10.
Yeah.
um,
10% EV2 ready.
10, and then they would, depending on when this application comes in for building permit, this is a unique situation where the building code cycle will change at the end of the year. The new green building requirements will increase the number of EV charging facilities, and it's kind of a tiered system. And I believe the architect has the numbers dialed in, but it does go up in percentage, and that's what would be required at a minimum to install per their request for a concession from the REACH codes.
Great, thank you. My other question is perhaps of the staff, which is, has there been any projection in terms of the number of families or children that are likely to be in the entire 330 development? And what school would they typically go to based on the current districting?
Well, there would be 90 units, so there would be 90 households, and I think that would be the appropriate answer, is we would count as 90 households. As far as the school boundaries, I'd have to take a look at that. I'm not sure the relevancy for transportation, but if Michelle, you might be aware if that was in the transportation.
I can try to answer the school servicing. I think we have it in page 34 of the staff report. The schools servicing this area are Almond Elementary, Egan Middle School, and Los Altos High. That's the schools that are assigned to this project I think at this point.
Okay, thank you. Those were my only questions.
Yeah, and just for the Planning Commission and the Complete Streets Commission, under SB 50, school impacts, they're mitigated by school fees. And so, and that is that satisfies the complete impact from schools. So, and they have to pay the school fees prior to building permit, I believe.
That is correct, Julie.
Thank you. So next, Vice Chair Van Katterman.
Thank you, Chair. Few quick questions. You mentioned that I think the waste collection will happen in public right of way. I'm assuming that's on the street. Is that correct?
That's the requested waiver from the applicant side.
And is there a designated area on the street that's been identified? And how is that in relation to the entry, the driveway?
It would not be blocking the entry driveway, but it is just off of the driveway to the west, I believe. I don't have the plan with me right now, but I do know the applicant is sharing a slide that shows the exact location and the truck angle during the time of service, because this has been an ongoing conversation with Mission Trails, and which is why they have requested a waiver just for the service day pickup area.
Okay, thank you. The question I had, correct me if I'm wrong. So you mentioned there was electrical outlets, both. So the 10% is for EV parking, but there was also electrical outlets in the bike, in the class 1 bike facility as well, correct?
So they are definitely providing 9 EV2 ready spaces at this point in the proposal. I'm requesting that we spoke to the applicant earlier last week, and they have agreed to provide the infrastructure in the bike room. I'm requesting the Complete Streets Commission to make that as a condition of approval in your motion.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
So regarding the bicycle parking itself, what Vta guidelines were used? Were the older ones, or ones that were revised recently? And then are there any concessions or exemptions made for the number of bicycle parking?
I'm looking to Michelle to answer the bike standards that were used in the transportation analysis. While I'll get to that, I don't believe there were any exceptions made in the proposal. They have exceeded the required amounts per the standards required, but I will leave that the standards that were used. I'm going to let Michelle answer that.
I'll have to look at that and get back to you.
I have
Okay,
it, Michelle.
just to, sorry, go ahead.
You have it?
Yeah. Hi. My name is Christy Weiss. I'm with David J. Towers and Associates. We're the CEQA consultant working with planning on this document, and Michelle as well. So in the environmental document, we talk about how Michelle will have to find out which VTA guidelines were used, but the ones that we used, it's calculated that the project would need to provide a minimum of 30 Class 1, which are the long-term secured bicycle parking spaces, and then 6 Class 2 short-term bicycle parking spaces. And the project, as proposed, includes a total of 45 Class 1 bicycle parking spaces and 6 Class 2 bicycle parking spaces. So they meet the Class 2 parking requirement by VTA and then exceed the Class 1 parking requirement by VTA.
Okay, I'll wait for my comments to sort of react to that, but I believe that was the older VTA guidelines or newer guidelines, but I'll wait for the comment sections to make comments. The other question I had was related to the EV concessions, EV charging concessions itself. Were these concessions primarily to do with cost? Is that correct? And if I'm not wrong, I think the report was indicating that the cost of adding additional EV chargers was $81,000 for the remaining spots. Is that correct?
That is the reason for the request, because of the cost and implications to add 81 stalls to make every single stacker parking space EV ready, to comply with the EV ready requirement.
Okay, thank you. I did have one question on the VMT analysis. I know it's not related, but should I wait for a later presentation to ask that question, or?
You can ask them right now and we'll provide
Chair, what do you
answers.
say?
You have a question specific to this project. You should go ahead now with your question.
Okay, all right. I know that this does not impact the project, but I would, I would request at least have an explanation on specifically with San Antonio, sorry, El Camino and Distal Drive, where it indicates that the LOS is greater than 80, and then there's an increment that says it's over, let's see, 76.1. I'm trying to understand as a percentage what that increase was. It says over greater than 80 for the average delay for the project conditions, and then the increment was 76.1. I'm trying to understand what that percentage is as a percentage of what it was before. That seems like it's almost double, just if I look at it saying it's 80.
I'd have to look at the calculation in the appendix to look at what the number was. Once the number gets to be large above 80, we generally don't show them. The analysis is based on formulas that aren't linear. So once you get above the capacity, these formulas show the delay quickly increasing, and in reality, it might be a little bit overly conservative, because people won't choose to wait that long. They will give up and make another choice. They'll find another route, or to avoid it. But that's why we're showing that's why this shows a big increase in the delay. It's just because the volume that's projected is well above the capacity. But even so, the volumes at that street would not meet the peak hour signal warrants. And since there is another path that goes out through a signalized intersection, we aren't recommending any improvements or signalization at the unsignalized intersection.
Okay, great. Thank you for that explanation. Thank you, staff. That's all I had, Chair.
I'll just quickly add that with regards to VTA parking standards, if they did change recently, you also have to consider that we need to look at the requirements when this project was found complete, as in complete submitted and our review is complete. So that's also kind of a factor in this. The city kind of moving forward should, this is kind of a side note, but should then adopt standards for parking and not necessarily rely on VTA, but just adopt local standards for parking.
Thank you for that information, Steve. I think these are, as you pointed out, the old guidelines, but you're correct that this project was completed before the new guidelines were done. We've had direction from our commission that we will use the new VTA standings moving forward as new projects are submitted here, and that we didn't need to go through an adoption of them because we have been using the VTA guidelines historically. Other commissioners with questions? Commissioner Ouyang.
Hi, thank you, Chair. First, thank you, staff, for the detailed summary report. That was really helpful in highlighting all the details of the project. I just have one question related to kind of the flow of traffic and pedestrians in and out of the building. So I'm looking at attachment M, slide 9, where it's trying to show that I actually think there's a mistake in the key because it's showing pedestrian flow going in through, I think, what I think is the driveway. But my question is primarily around the flow of pedestrians and cyclists. I can't really tell what's the expectation for where cyclists would go in and out. And if you could just clarify the pedestrian flow as well.
Sure, I'm navigating to the sheet on attachment M, and
I'll share my screen real quick for the benefit
okay.
of everybody. So I guess I'll just quickly answer it. It doesn't look like they have vehicular flow and pedestrian flow, and where bicycles fit within that, I'm not quite sure. It's possible we can bring it up with the applicant and architect, whether they can add some sort of door directly into the bicycle room, or some design to facilitate where bicycle traffic would go.
Yeah, and the question, well, it was going to, I can save it for the comments section.
And I think Commissioner Yang, you're right. The blue arrows are actually the vehicle flow, and the green ones are the pedestrian flow. But the legend has it the other way around. Sorry about that. We'll get the applicant to fix it before we go to council.
Commissioner Ouyang, other questions?
Oh, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just have one thing that I wanted to ask about, and that's about the major transit stop. Can you take us through the qualifications of the major transit stop? How does this project qualify under a major transit stop?
Sure, I'd like to share my screen back to the slide, which has a lot of information, and bring your attention. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So this is the density bonus law is defining the major transit stop, which has the same meaning in the section of the Public Resources Code. And basically, what's happening with the definitions of the major transit stop, it also includes a the state law is not definitive, especially density bonus law is not definitive about how they define major transit stop, but it points to the Public Resources Code, which basically says in the combined definitions of the major transit stop, and this is occurring in the density bonus law and the Public Resources Code. A major transit stop can be a stop where there is an intersection of two or more bus routes with the frequency of service of intervals of 15 minutes or less during morning and afternoon peak commute periods. And so El Camino Real and Showers, like you saw in the map from the transportation analysis, which is this one, I believe this one. So this stop, El Camino Real and Showers, which is here, the yellow star, it's got the rapid 522 and it's got the 22. During peak hour, AM and PM peak hour, the bus frequencies along this line and at the stop is less than 15 minutes. In addition to these two lines running shown in red, local bus number 40 also has a stop at El Camino and Showers in the morning peak commute hours at every 7 to 8 minutes. And I do believe we have a letter and a memo from the applicant's side also that confirms that. And these are the maps from our transportation analysis from Hexagon. And the intersecting lines are 22, 522, 40. That's one definition that qualifies this to be a major transit stop. Alternatively, the state law provisions and the resource code give us definitions that include, let me not say it out of memory so I can go back to that slide, to the map. It says that a major transit stop has a bus rapid transit station. So El Camino and Real and Showers have the 522 rapid line that stops here. And so up until very even earlier this year, MTC didn't have this map available, but now they have this open data map where they qualify along all over the region, especially along El Camino Real. This map shows that El Camino and Showers has been designated as a major transit stop. So it is not a, it's not, it wasn't clear to us for the longest time, but now we can affirmatively say that El Camino and Showers, which is about 0.4 miles from the Distal Circle project, is definitely a major transit stop. Does that help answer the question?
It helps answer the question. Let me just follow up a little bit.
Sure.
So are you saying that it qualifies on two different grounds, or?
Yes, it qualifies on both grounds. That's what I was trying to say.
Okay. And let me take the second ground first, an existing rail or bus rapid transit. When you mentioned that this wasn't clear for the longest time, was that something that was added to the definition?
Yes, and I think state density bonus law, and I'm looking to Jolie and our city attorney's team to, when we had the study session and things like that, we didn't have this major transit stop even available as a visual. But when you go down to the rapid 522, bus line 22, and also being there on the side, AM and PM peak hour commutes clearly have a very busy stop and go within 15-minute interval. There is always a bus at El Camino and Showers. And this has been vetted by the applicants too, and they provided us data with how often the bus stops there. And even in January, we didn't have this map that now we have MTC that particularly points out and says, hey, we did the calculation and intervals, and we can affirmatively say that this is a major transit stop. Staff has, basically we're happy to find a map and point to this and say, okay, we can finally say for sure that this qualifies. But Even on the ground, you can tell in the morning peak hour, evening peak hour, there are plenty buses going up and down from the Palo Alto Regional Center all the way back up to East Ridge.
Yeah.
So commissioners, this is Director Zorns. I'm going to interject really quick just to kind of bring it on home. Radha's already kind of pointed out very specifically that there's already two mechanisms that actually qualify this for existing transportation that's in the area. I'm going to point out a third and final that's kind of even overarching. So one, government code section 65915, which is the density bonus, references the public resources code of 21155. And then public resources code 21155 references public resources code 21064.3. So we're talking about three different sections of the government code. That's very indicative of California legislation to use things by reference of existing definitions that are within the California Public Resources Code or other parts of the government code. With that being said, is that there is this standalone overarching qualification that this project would qualify for. A major transit stop is defined in section 21064.3, except that for the purposes of this section, it also includes major transit stops that are included in the applicable regional transportation plan, meaning future planned stops. So even if something wasn't existing as of today, future planned stops within the regional transportation plan and network actually qualify this project for the 0 parking spaces required for the site. So we all have to keep that in mind, and that's something that is very clearly defined within the government code. So just so that we're all clear on that point as well.
So I appreciate that, and I'm trying to get us to crystal clear clarity. Are there future, so in that third category, are there future planned stops that qualify us for this?
There are, yes, because this is within a high quality transportation corridor, yes.
And then the first, so the first qualification in terms of the bus routes, just to make it really clear, Radha, you're saying it's the 522 and the 22 lines. Is that what you're saying that qualify for it? I know we have a slide with a big list of buses, but I'm trying to understand which are the exact ones that qualify.
Rapid 522, Route 22, and Route 40. Those are the three lines that that bring buses less than 15 minutes interval at El Camino and Showers at this point, yeah.
And then in your slides, Radha, there was a second thing, and that one I think is new to me, and I think you said that was newly added, and that one was, what was it, a major transit?
So the MTC, let me share the slide again. I'll go to it. MTC has started to develop open data maps for major transit. Let me try to open this so we can.
And really, I'm asking about, back to your slides, there's bus, you had something on there, bus, what is it, rapid transit
station?
Yeah, I think that if I remember right, that is new. I don't recall that from before. So could you just define exactly what that is?
We'll have to.
The definition of a rapid bus transit station just means that it has a fixed location and a rapid bus stops there. So it doesn't, the government or the Public Resources Code doesn't have any further definition for the rapid bus transit station. And just to be clear, the definition I don't think changed, but as Director Zorns alluded to, these references, you kind of get buried or try to start digging further to see what all these different references mean. And that was also uncovered, and realizing, well, yeah, there is a rapid bus transit that stops and has the stations along El Camino Real. And I apologize, the slide that Renu showed, or sorry, that Radha showed was the wrong stop, but the one to the northwest was the El Camino and Shower stop.
Yeah, and one last question, and sorry to go into so many details here, but the question then is Steve, if the bus rapid transit station if it's because we have the 522 line with the express service, then I would assume that the entire El Camino Real would then qualify as these major transit stops. But when I was on the MTC website late this afternoon, there's only portions of El Camino Real that qualify. So I'm still not, can you just help me? I'm still not really clear on what.
We would have to look at that, but it might depend on with regards to the stops along El Camino Real. I don't know the interval or the distances between stops, but under the half mile, there could be some stops that are longer than that distance. And just using the data of where those existing stops are, not the definition which Director Zorns alluded to, which is the planned service stops.
Yeah.
So
and we have to I'm not muted. We have to also consider what Mr. Zorn said, that this is, it's included in a regional transportation plan. And that's MTC has included it, and we can rely on that. I believe this project qualifies on many levels, and the applicant has written a report. We can rely on that as well. So right now, I'm just saying that there is substantial evidence that supports that this is a rapid transit stop.
Thank you. And I believe that the MTC website was updated earlier this year. So there was changes around that. I think, I guess I can ask a question about attachment D1. When I read attachment D1, it says, although MTC identifies the project site as being within a transit priority area, it does not identify the major transit stop within 1/2 mile of the project site. So I guess that's why I'm getting inconsistent information here. And I don't know if that's because of the dates these things were delivered or if there's still inconsistency.
No, you're right about the attachment D1 came to us in February 9th, 2022. And MTC's open data map I don't know what the date of the map is, but it's an interactive open data MTC map that shows region-wide major transit stop locations.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Maloof, question.
If I may, Chair. Rod, if I remember one of your slides was talking about a recommendation by the city to replace the sidewalk. Would you please flash that slide again?
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Slide for conditions of approval that came from Public Works. And so condition number 30, 32, 33 has a general recommendation from Public Works to remove and replace sidewalk along Distill Circle. And so when we publish the packet, the applicant will probably point to this. It was a request from the applicant to clarify that the removing and replacing of the sidewalk could be along the project frontage, and that staff is requesting that we support that request.
So Distill Circle extends all the way down the proposed project and down
and around.
And so we're talking about the whole Distill Circle or just a portion in front of the project?
So that's the part that the condition of approval is silent on, and we want to clarify we want to clarify tonight, and we also will hear this from the applicant that the request is to remove and replace sidewalk in front of for the project frontage only, and not along the whole of Distill Circle.
Okay, so in this case, that would be done by the applicant, right? Not by the city.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And would that include both sides of the street sidewalks or just one side?
Specifically project frontage, just in front of the project.
One side in front of the project.
That's correct.
And so then what happens to the sidewalk where it ends? I mean, I'm looking at the picture, the top picture, and I think the sidewalk kind of extends passed, there's a concession there, I guess, the Clark Carlos Jr. Does it end at the sidewalk end? What happens at that intersection where the construction of the project sidewalk ends and then the city's responsibility begins?
Unfortunately, I can't answer that question. It
Yeah,
would be
so
something.
just to be clear, again, the applicant is requesting some specificity of those 3 conditions of approval.
Yeah.
It was reviewed with the engineering division and they agree with those changes. Under the Subdivision Map Act, the city can require certain improvements for public benefit. And these are the ones along the project frontage that there's nexus for. So beyond the project frontage, unless there's some sort of impacts of the project, we would go beyond that nexus requirement. And so generally, when a project goes in and damages sidewalk and it cracks or it's in disrepair, then that gets replaced as long as resurfacing up to the, it's typically the center line of the street. It could be a little bit different just depending on sort of the conditions of the street. And then for the sidewalks, it's usually right where the frontage of the project ends. It might depend on a joint where they can do a cold joint to the existing sidewalk facility. But
so just to be clear, what you're asking us here is to consider limiting the sidewalk replacements to the frontage of the project, just to be very specific, right?
Yes, and that would be consistent with the Subdivision Map Act.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay, I just want to thank the Complete Streets Commissioners for their questions, and we will turn it back to Planning Commission.
Thank you so much. Planning Commission, if you got any questions, just speak up, or if you want to raise your hand and we can be more organized about it. Anybody, just questions at this point? I know we've seen this before, so anybody?
I had a couple. Can I ask the architect a question or no?
I think that would be more applicable probably when the applicant does their presentation.
Okay, I can wait then.
Yeah, this is just really for staff.
Okay, got it. I'll wait.
Any other commissioners? Okay. I think it's now time for the applicant to get their 15 minutes.
Excuse me, Susan, I was muted. I have some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, my apologies because
no
I
problem. Go
muted
ahead.
myself and I spoke into the muted mic and it didn't do me any good. So, and I want to come back to this issue of the major transit stop because I think it's a problem. And I want to talk specifically about to address this. Radha, thank you for clarifying what the report says about the lines. We'll come back to that when I have comments. I want to look specifically at section 2106.43 subdivision A. That's the one we're talking about that says an existing rail or rapid transit station. And later on, it talks about stops. Station and stops are different words. One of the fundamental rules of statutory interpretation is that you give every word its meaning and you treat the words in a way that harmonizes. What tells you that a station and a stop are the same thing? Which is what it seems to me, and that to you or anybody, Nick or Steve or anybody who wants to get in. What defines the station? And I understand that 21060.2 says that it's a clearly defined bus station served by a rapid transit. Okay, and there's other language in the density bonus law that suggests that a station is like a BART station. It's got parking, it's got other things. And so I'm wondering how we know, what authority tells us that a station and a stop are the same thing? End of question.
So this is Director Zorns. I'm going to kind of try to clarify in the best means possible. The legislature does not clearly define or differentiate between the two. You are correct in regards to essentially that a station and a stop have been used interchangeably throughout the law. So unless Jolie Houston can chime in and disseminate something even further in concrete, that's kind of the city's position about that particular item. Again,
Yes.
I'm going to draw the entire commission to that this isn't a regional transportation plan. And so really, we do not have the authority to deny or condition this project for anything beyond the fact that this is in a transportation corridor and within that plan for future stops. But Jolie is going to chime in.
But
Yeah,
Julie,
so-
before you chime in, let me ask a follow-up question, and you may want to address this as well. So I apologize for jumping in. Nick, sorry, I'm having a moment here. It said in the D1, whatever the report from the Glazer Weil people, and it says in the other report that it includes both an existing and a plan. The density bonus law specifically incorporates not only existing but also planned things. How do you know it includes planned ones? What is the authority for that statement? They don't clarify it in the report. I don't see anything in the density bonus law that would suggest that. So I'm wondering how you know that it incorporates planned stations. In other words, what's the relevance of the MTC thing?
Well,
And maybe that's a Jolie question. I don't know.
Well, I was just going to say, because under Public Resource Codes 21155,
Mhm.
it says be within the half mile of a major transit stop or high quality transit corridor included in a regional transportation plan. A major transit stop is defined in 21064. And it also, and then for purposes of this section, which is 21155, it also includes major transit stops that are included in applicable regional transportation plans. So a major, a transit stop or high quality corridor is defined in 21064.3.
Right.
And it includes, yes, a transit station, but for purposes of the definition, it says it also, a major transit stop is defined in that one. So 21155 says it's the transit stop is defined in the other one. So, and that also includes a broader range, which is an existing rail or bus rapid transit station. So my statutory analysis of that is this is a transit stop, and it's also included in a regional transportation plan.
And my question is, why is that suddenly part of the density bonus law? I mean, my question, all the density bonus laws, well, we'll save this for the discussion. I guess we're debating and not questioning. Okay, but you know, we'll come back to that. But I don't think we agree at all on what this says.
Well, yes, and I'm just saying that our legal opinion that's been provided to the city is saying that this qualifies.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, I'm done.
All right.
Okay. Any other planning commissioners who have any questions for the staff?
I just want to, no, I don't. I feel like when our attorney unequivocally states that we are in a corridor and it's like supported by so much documentation that it's an exercise in futility going back and forth. This is how our commission ends up with huge legal fees because we ignore the really clear opinions of our attorney. So we can keep doing this, but it's pretty frustrating.
Thank you. I would tend to agree with you. So, all right. I think we're ready, right, Steve, for the applicant to give his or her presentation.
Yes, so they will turn their video on and unmute themselves, and I will set my clock for 15 minutes, but they're going to be sharing their screen, so I'll give them a 2-minute warning maybe.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Welton Jordan. I am the Chief Real Estate Development Officer for EAH Housing. And thank you for your time this evening for us to discuss 330 Distal Circle. I am here with our team. We have Ktgy, we have Lily, we have our landscape architect, Jet. We have the Office of Supportive Housing, and would like to also note that Consuelo Hernandez, the Director of the Office of Supportive Housing, is here. If she wants to chime in and say a few words, we can do so. She can do so. And obviously the City of Los Altos, who has been working with us very diligently through this process. So before I turn it over to Lily, if Consuelo wants to say anything, please do. And then I'll turn it over to Lily for a quick introduction to Ktgy.
Thank you, Welton. Good evening, everybody. Consuelo Hernandez. Apologies, my video is not working this evening. Thank you. I just wanted to take the time to let you all know that county staff is available to answer any questions should you have them. Thank you. Thank you, Welton.
Thank you, Consuelo. So EAH, we are a nonprofit affordable housing developer. We were founded in 1968. We have hundreds of properties in our portfolio. We are a developer, manager, property manager, and service provider. And we serve over 25,000 residents daily across the states of California and Hawaii. And I will turn it over to Lily to give a quick intro to Ktgy.
Good evening, everyone. Lily Simicella, a design director in my Oakland studio at Ktgy Architecture and Planning. Ktgy has been deeply rooted in all types of residential design, as you can see here, for 30 years now. And I just want to say that 330 Distal Circle is especially meaningful for me as the first 100% affordable housing project in Los Altos. So I'm so proud to be a part of this team, and I look forward to walking you through our design tonight.
And this was covered in the staff report and Rada said it again, so I won't spend too much time on it. We just wanted to have a quick recap of our community outreach to date. It's kind of an ongoing process. It's never done, but there were plenty of community outreach over the past year or so. We had 3 in the first half or so of 21. In the second half of the year, we had a design discussion, and then we had an open house. And then for the Planning Commission, the last time we were before you were in January, we were kind of, it felt like it wasn't that long ago, but you know, we are here today and happy to be here. And this is just a list of some, but not all of the people that we met both virtually and in person when discussing the development. And again, we still field questions, calls, take meetings when anyone wants to talk about the development. And now I'll turn it back over to Lily to discuss the design. Thanks.
Great. In the following slides, I'd like to orient you to our site. Here is the map of 330 Distal Circle and why it's such a great location. So our site is in the large pink star at kind of the bottom middle of the site where the circles are radiating out. We are just a step away from El Camino, and shown here are the neighborhood amenities that we have identified as such great assets to this community. So there's transportation, grocery stores, services, schools, parks, restaurants. So the list goes on, and I'm quite impressed with the walkability of this neighborhood. So yeah, the circles represent quarter mile radiuses. And here, diving deeper into the site, our site shown is in pink with a white dashed line. We are surrounded primarily by office buildings and a Carl's Jr. as well. And towards our south is the Palo Alto Medical Foundation parking lot with single family neighbors adjacent to that, and then single family homes to our west as well. And then here you see our proximity to El Camino Real on the bottom right. And then just diving a little bit deeper into our site, you see our site in pink, and here we identified the distance from our property line. Our building is inset from that a little bit to our existing context, and you see that. And then we also identified with the blue arrows just how much we really want to activate the ground plane at Distal Circle. So we conducted a shadow study here early on to help everyone understand really what is the impact of our project on the surrounding context to preserve access to daylight to our neighbors. And these images illustrate the shadows cast from our proposed building at key times of the year, summer, winter solstice, and then the equinox. And our findings show that we are casting a shadow at the surrounding offices and the Carl's Jr. at certain times of the year. However, we are not casting a shadow on our single family neighbors to the west. And then we like to highlight a couple of items since our last Planning Commission study session in January. There was some great feedback provided, and two of the main items was that we have the bicycle room tucked a little bit far in the project, closer to the garage in the back, and the request was to look into a location that would be a little bit more accessible. And then there was also the design feedback that the bays that we were showing along Distal Circle were very regular and very similar in size, and the request was to provide more variability. So we'd like to walk you through. This is our ground level plans. Thank you, Retta, for such a thorough presentation. What I'd like to identify is just in pink is our amenities. We really wanted to engage the street. And here you can see there's from the left is a multi-purpose room. We have offices, co-work, lobby, lounge, laundry, all fronting Distal. And here we moved the bicycle room forward to front Distal Circle. We also have the long driveway on the bottom right hand side to enter the parking, which is behind. And the thought was to tuck it behind the amenity space. We decided to keep the driveway on screen right. And I know there's feedback on whether or not the driveway location was appropriate where it is and whether we should move it to the left. Our thought was this is better access in terms of driving into the project and not having to drive along the curve, but also that fire needs to stage in the area closer to when Distal Circle needs to start turning. And so in order to be able to have fire stage there and access the corner, far right or far left corner of the building, we wanted to minimize the vehicular activity on that left-turn edge. And so the thought was to keep the entry on the right. Here, the 90 parking stalls are both mechanized and surface. The surface stalls are mainly for accessible use or loading and unloading. And then in our upper level plan, it's a U shape. It hugs an internal courtyard that's on level 2 that is protected from the street. We have an amenity that opens up to that courtyard. And then levels 3 and 5 are very similar to this plan, but without an amenity. And then we'd like to walk you through just the elevation comparison. On the upper elevation, you see what we were presenting in January with the 4 more regular size bays. Those have been modified to 5 bays that vary throughout the elevation. So the thought is that the 2 larger bays are on the 2 corners to provide 2 prominent ends, and then the smaller bays in the center. We've also changed the color slightly, so a little bit more contrast between the bays, and then you'll notice the recesses are highlighted in white in between, as well as we have added wood composite accents, and you can kind of see the kind of reddish orange color that dances around horizontally between the levels. And then also we just lightened up the color of the solar fins and lightened up the quantity as well to provide a little more variation in the pattern. Here you see a view of the multi-purpose room looking down Distal Circle towards El Camino. You see how the warm wood base engages the street. We also wanted to highlight there's a small plaza out there where Distal starts to turn. And the thought is to have a seating in a semicircle with enhanced paving as a place of respite. So very key to our design from very early on is creating a sustainable building and community. And for us, that means incorporating sustainable principles very early on, from environmentally preferred materials, resource efficient landscapes, sustainable transportation, bicycle parking, e-bike charging, just to name a few. And in our aerial view here, I just want to highlight, we are intending to provide solar voltaic on the roof. And then also, I mentioned, kind of hinted at the passive solar shading fins in silver, and you can see those here. And then last but not least, we have a view from Distal of our entry lobby. And this highlights the mass timber base and really just our intent to provide that warmth as you walk down Distal Circle. So with that wraps up our proposed design to date. And I'll have Welton walk you through some of the requests for the conditions of approval.
Thanks, Lily. So most of the conditions that have been provided, we are in agreement with, and I think some of these are just some minor modifications in our opinion. The first one is on the affordable housing language. What we are requesting is that some of the specificity about the unit type, not the AMI level or the AMI unit count, but rather the type. Really what this does is to allow flexibility for some of our competitive funding sources. So that is, it's not going to change any of the average affordability. It's not going to change the number of extremely low, very low, or low, but it gives us some wiggle room to move things around as needed. The next one was the diesel generator prohibition, and we just wanted some clarification that a natural gas generator is allowable. Pretty straightforward, so I'll just leave that there. And the next one was similar to what Radha had brought up, was clarification that the frontage or Distal Circle was just the frontage of the property and not the entire street. And with that, I think we are open for questions, feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll throw it open to the Complete Streets Commission for any questions of the applicant.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, does anyone have any questions of the applicant? I'm not hearing anything, I'm not seeing anything, and I see no blue hands or yellow hands or hands of other colors. So we can turn it back to the planning. Oh, wait, Vice Chair?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a question.
Go ahead, Steve, yes.
Sorry, I called on the Vice Chair. Vice Chair, go ahead, please. And then I'll come back to you, Commissioner.
All right, thank you, Chair. I just wanted a clarification on a couple of things. One was the bicycle parking now, I think from the competitive plan it says move to the front of the building. I'm just trying to understand what the access to that bike locker, where it is. Could you please quickly walk me through that?
Sure, we could pull up the plan. 1 minute. So the thought is for security reasons, there's no access directly from the street. So you would enter via that lobby lounge, the 2 double doors, and then you would enter the bicycle room from that direction. Right now, we are not providing access and any conflict from the cars that are going in and out along the driveway. But they're close enough to the front door that it's easily accessible.
And is that front door also accessed by pedestrians generally as well?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. And then a clarifying question that I asked the staff about EV level 1 charging on the remaining parking spaces. Could you clarify if are the spaces they're not EV1 ready, but what is the cost of retrofitting compared to cost of installation? Do you have a sense for that? Retrofitting at a later stage compared to cost of installation now.
I do, surprisingly. So we've looked at a document by Energy Solutions and it's generally for the Bay Area. And I think if we were to provide the EV ready stalls today, I think it's about $1,000 for the infrastructure. A lot of it are transformer cost. However, if we were to retrofit it, I think for over 60 units, multifamily dwelling units is about 1,400. So there's an increase in cost if we do it at a later date. I would say that the $1,000 is for EV ready, and with the mechanized system, if we were actually to then install the pedestals at a later time, it would be each pedestal in addition would cost $2,500. So the request to provide less EV charging is not just the $81,000, when it's built. It would be also the cost in the future to install the pedestals.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. That's all the questions I had, Chair.
Commissioner Katz, it's your turn now.
My questions were just covered. Thank you.
Oh, great. Anyone else? I'm not seeing any other questions, so we'd like to turn it back to the Planning Commission. Thank you for the opportunity that we could ask our questions. I think this is the first time our commission has seen this project, so we appreciate your generosity and time.
Okay, thank you. Planning Commissioners, would anyone like to jump in?
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Richard.
I was pleased. One of my first question was how you access the bike storage room, and then you told us through the lobby. Is the lobby a secured entrance? And my concern is that you're coming back from work, you got your bike, and you come up to the front doors. Is you're going to push the door open? Or do we need a key lock, the fab? Are we going to push it? How are we going to get into it? Either a pedestrian, but more concerned with somebody just walking up with their bike and so forth. Thank you.
I'll take a shot at that one, Lily. Typically, and I'll just use typically here, when we have shared entrances, if they'll typically be, I know this isn't the proper use for it, but there is the accessibility button for an auto door. So that could be pressed. And we haven't gotten to, are we going to fob it at night? But anybody who lives there will have either a key or a key fob to be able to get in.
That's great. The accessibility button is awesome. Thank you.
Okay, any other commissioners like to? I see Eric. I thought, no?
I can go.
Okay, thanks, Mayor.
So I just wanted to also disclose that I had ex parte communication with the architect after the last joint meeting in January. But my questions are, I noticed that the previous design that was presented had on the elevation facing Distal Drive, it had balconies, and this version doesn't. So I just wasn't sure if there was maybe a construction reason for that or a design reason, and if those could be added if possible.
So that design did have balconies at one point, but then we realized there's a public utility easement that's 10 foot clear to sky that we cannot have anything, even disappointingly cantilevering balcony. So yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing something. Also, next question I had was on the floor plans. I noticed on sheet 2.4, the west corner has one unit on the 5th floor with the roof next to it. But then on the elevations on sheet 4.1, it looks like there's no units on the 5th floor. So I wasn't sure, is the elevation the one that's correct, or maybe I'm reading it wrong?
That is probably not the right elevation. So I'm just going to share my screen quickly.
Okay.
You're correct. There is a step down. This is something that was requested very early on in our community meetings, to step down to our neighbors and to provide less units there. So we did step down this unit, and then the building elevation is also stepped down. I'm not sure if maybe you were looking at this elevation.
Yeah, I think on 2.4, I think the floor plan for level 5 shows that there's one unit still there, but yeah,
so, yes. So this is the unit that doesn't exist on level 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then it does exist on level 4. So here, this is the unit that's not.
Okay, I see. So there won't be units on that 5th floor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. Okay, that was all I had. Thank you.
Okay, Susan, I managed to unmute myself again, so I have a quick question. The last time you were before us, you had some discussion about the wood on the ground level floor, and you said you had a good deal of experience using this in other projects. And I can't imagine why anybody would want to use a natural product on the side of a building. But that's a joke, folks. My question is, in your experience with the wood, quite apart from its other virtues, are there any cost benefits to using the wood as opposed to one of the other substances that are available?
Well,
or I mean, how does it stack up in terms of your cost of putting this together, as opposed to the things that we've specified in our code?
Correct. At one point when we did a cost analysis, the mass timber had a cost savings.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, though, as I'm building my own fence, that wood has skyrocketed, and it's difficult to then now a couple months later that the differential might be very similar. But I think the qualities of wood, because of the warmth in its nature, has those advantages.
Right, but I mean, allowing the supply chain to come back to something closer to normal, if it ever does, then the wood would offer some cost benefits to you.
We're hoping so.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's useful information. Thank you. And I like the wood, by the way.
Okay. Anybody else from the Planning Commission? Then I have one question. There was a mention about you would like to have the requirement of how the units are designated within the different income levels removed to allow you, I think your phrase was wiggle room with lenders. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure, thank you for the question. So the way that we finance affordable housing are typically through very competitive funding sources at the state, including low-income housing tax credits. These rules are always changing, and we just want the flexibility to be able to change with them as appropriate. So it's not, overly, I mean, that's about as straightforward as answer as I can give you. We just, we're gonna provide the affordability. We may end up sticking with the unit count as shown, but we just want to make sure that we can position this development to be the most competitive that it can be when we get to those funding competitions.
Okay, and is there any way to give then the city assurance that there will be a reasonable distribution of the size of units within the different income levels?
There will be. I mean, this is what we do this all the time. So we don't have a habit of, for instance, making all of one unit a particular AMI level. We do try to distribute them, but it was so specific that, for instance, let's say it was 13 3-bedrooms and we wanted to do 12. It wouldn't be 13 3-bedrooms and now we want to do 0. It may just be a unit move, here or there. So we just want to try to, keep it a little bit more open so that we can have that flexibility without the fear of, not the fear, but not having to come back to, Planning Commission and City Council to ask for any variances.
Perhaps you could think of a medium ground where you don't remove them entirely, but you have the flexibility you get, but we still get some assurance in writing that they're going to be distributed. Is that something you've done in the past?
Typically what I see is what we've asked for. So that's traditionally what I've seen on, a handful of our other developments is the AMI levels themselves are really the target. I'll give you assurances, here on public record that we'll make sure that we keep the AMI spread appropriately amongst the unit sizes.
Okay, thank you.
And this is Director Zorns. I'm just going to point out one thing just for a point of clarity and assurance to the commissioners as well as to the community based on the requested change of a condition of approval. In 2001, on January 28th, the city executed the Memorandum of Understanding for 330 Distal with the County of Santa Clara. In that MOU, we set forth the requirements for the AMI units. This isn't, the developer's request is not a deviation from the MOU. So the assurance is also already built into the MOU agreement that we have standing, which is how we've even gotten here today. I also really want to draw a very clean, clear distinction. This is the city's first and probably for quite some time going to be our only 100% affordable. This is very different when we're talking about distribution of income levels and units throughout the property. The entire property is going to go towards our RENA account, which is significant. So I do want to just make sure that I understand that we might typically ask for some assurances about a 3-bedroom unit is going to be for, a low income unit, but we're talking about one unit. Right now, we're talking about 88 completely affordable units and then 2 manager units. So it is a very big difference than what we're used to reviewing here in the city. So I just want to make sure we keep that at the forefront of every commissioner's mind this evening. Thank you.
No, that's very good background for us. So thank you for that. I think that closes the commissioner's questions for the applicant. I think now we would go to public comment, but Steve, would it be appropriate to take a 10-minute break and come back before that?
Yeah, it's about 8:53 on my clock. So if you would like to take a break now would be a good time.
Unless anyone objects, why don't we reconvene at, let's be specific, 10 minutes, 9:03?
Okay.
Okay with everyone? Okay.
Yes.
Recording stopped.
Okay, I think we're ready to get started
Recording
again.
in progress.
I think we're ready to get started again. And it's time for the public comment section. Steve, what would you suggest in terms of the length of time for each speaker?
So I think if the members of the public who want to speak can raise their hand, clicking on that hand feature, wherever it might be on your screen.
It's under reactions.
Okay, thank you. Yours is different than mine. And then once we get the number of speakers, then we can kind of appropriately assign the amount of time. Usually it's 2 to 3 minutes. Right now I see 4. And if you don't have that feature, or if you're on the phone, we will allow for unmuting, and then you can just speak at the time. I will try to call the speaker and the next one that I see. And if you can state your name for the record, although you don't have to, it just helps with us in managing the meeting. So right now I do see 5 speakers. And how much time would you like to give to the speakers?
Why don't we give, unless anyone objects, 2 minutes to each speaker?
Okay, let me get my clock going. 2 minutes. Give me 1 sec. I'm sorry, just trying to get this set up. Okay, so the first speaker that I see on my screen is Joe Beninato, followed by Damien. Joe, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Joe Beninato. I'm a Los Altos resident. I am really excited about this project. It's, first of all, from the affordable housing perspective and RENA numbers, but also the use of modular techniques and mass timber, which I haven't seen much, if at all, around Los Altos. It's really a great technique for trying to build something that looks great and also is lower on the cost curve. Prices have spiked a little bit during the pandemic, but they've been coming back down in recent months. So hopefully that will continue. I hope we can get this built as soon as possible. Channeling my friend Salim, I know these things take time, but whatever we can do to speed this up and get it approved and get digging would really be appreciated by the residents, who will hopefully be moving in sometime before 2025, as the current schedule indicates. I had one concern that came up multiple times around the bicycle room, and as an avid cyclist, the accessibility to that room is really difficult. You can imagine how banged up that corner is going to get as people try to come around and stick a bike in there, and the pedals get caught and all sorts of other things. One suggestion is, I've seen where sliding doors can make a big difference on access to a bike room. Still have it locked and only accessible to residents, but just have a straight shot into the bike storage, so that you're not banging up the walls and having to call maintenance and paint all the time. But really looking forward to this happening soon. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Joe. I think you said Damien was next, Steve?
Yeah, Damien, followed by Gary Hedden. Damien, you can unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. Nice meeting you, everyone. First time here, appreciate it. I'm also excited to having this property built. At the same time, I pretty much our kitty corner, all of the photos shown so far didn't take into account the houses that are close to the property. And from a privacy perspective, I remodeled my house about 2 years ago, meet all the codes, had to reduce the size of the roof, etc. And now I'm gonna have this very, very tall property, which is gonna be looking straight into my house through the various windows. There is, I think, 1 or 2 other houses close by, kitty corners, that have swimming pools as well. So the concern that I have is just the privacy aspect, that having such a tall building will have. We've been trying to go back and forth with the architect, EHH housing as well. But so far we haven't gotten to a place where we have agreed on what to do with that respect. So that's a major concern right now from my point of view, just the privacy implications of such a tall building overlooking really straight. I have young kids, etc., to my vendor windows, etc., as well as my backyard and whatnot. The second concern that I have is just the amount of parking. So even though it's stated that 90 units, 90 parking spots were not required to provide more, reality is parking will likely overflow. Just that people will be parking on the street. The city codes are not really enforced today. Had to go back and forth already to get an RV taken care of there based on what the city codes are. Unclear why some city codes are enforced, why some are not. But that just want to highlight as another concern.
Okay, thank you, Damian. Next is Gary Hedden, followed by Ingrid Granados.
Good evening. Honored, I don't see my, sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Gary.
Okay, good evening, honored commissioners. I'm Gary Hedden, Los Altos resident. This all affordable project will address an unmet need in Los Altos. Like Joe, I too am very excited about the project. I had dinner 2 nights ago at Rustic House, and the manager, Jerry Beltramo, said his workers are interested. This is going to meet that unmet need. I hope those who work in Los Altos will be given a priority. We need workers in town for the success of our local businesses. I personally look for development that helps create walkable, bikeable neighborhoods. Such development allows people to get too many of the things that they need without driving a car. This project meets that criteria, although along with all the development on El Camino, it does lack one thing: easy access to a nearby park. Please put that on your radar, not just for this project, but in general. We need parks and trees along with new housing. Finally, please recommend this worthwhile and very attractive project for approval by council. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Next is Ingrid Granados, followed by, the name just says Farmera.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Ingrid Granados. I'm speaking on behalf of Destination Home and in support of the proposed development. We encourage the Planning Commission to vote in favor of the proposal of 330 Distal Circle and move forward with this 100% affordable multifamily housing project. This important new housing will create 90 urgently needed units for our neighbors that are in greatest need, including some of our lowest income and very vulnerable families. We know our partners at EAH Housing have the experience and successful track record to build and manage beautiful new developments this one will provide particularly quality housing for our neighbors that will really serve as an asset to the neighborhood and the city. Contrary to common myths, we know that new affordable housing developments make our neighborhoods safer and will not impact nearby property values. Because of this, we know it's imperative that we move forward with much needed housing to secure that our unsheltered neighbors come inside as quickly as possible. Thank you so much for your time and for your work on this vital part of our collective work to end and prevent homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid. Next is Farmera, and then I don't see anybody else, but we'll unmute people that might have called in and anybody else who wants to speak on this project. Farmera.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's Farmer, and the A is my first name, Andrew. Sorry. Yeah, appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm also a neighbor along Marriage Way, and I would just like to echo the comments of my other neighbor, Damien, who spoke earlier. I would say, I think, as others have said, I think this looks like a really beautiful building, and I think the street view And all of that is really wonderful. And I do think it will improve the neighborhood and is a great thing for the El Camino corridor, which I do think needs looking better. But I think we do have pretty serious concerns about privacy from at least the images we've seen, talking to, and do appreciate talking with the architects and the developer. And they've been good at talking to us, although, as Damien said, we don't yet have a really agreement on what to do. But with the height of the building and the positioning, I mean, you can literally see straight through our house. So that is concerning to us from a privacy perspective, and I hope something can be done about that. I'd make one other last comment, which is if I follow the discussion, it seems that if this project qualifies as it does with this high density affordable housing, essentially the commission can do almost nothing because the law says that they have no right to do that. That just seems that somebody ought to change the law, that there ought to be a position to think of mitigating circumstances such as privacy or so on, where maybe some of the constraints could be narrowed. It just seems to me really odd that one would set up a system that says if you qualify under this, you're free from all restrictions. I can understand having mitigation on those restrictions, but no ability to change them seems a little crazy. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I do see Susan Russell has raised her hand. And so Susan, if you want to speak for 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm speaking for the League of Women Voters. I think you have our letter. I want to agree with what Joe and Gary and Ingrid said on what a terrific project this is for Los Altos. And I just wanted to speak about the parking, that not only is EAH providing way more parking than they need to provide legally, but they're also providing more parking than they know is required at their other affordable housing developments. So they really know what they're doing in terms of the parking, and I don't think we should be worried about insufficient parking.
Sorry, are you done? I believe she's done. Okay. That's all that I see with their hands raised. If there's anybody else that would like to speak at this time, you can unmute yourselves. There are 2 callers on the phone. I'm not hearing anybody else, so Chair, if you want to close the public comment, you may. And then following that, the applicant does have the option of a 5-minute rebuttal. Sorry, Vice Chair, you're muted.
My mistake. Would the applicant like to take 5 minutes to speak on any of the comments or anything else?
Yes.
Okay.
So I just, I don't want to necessarily call it a firm rebuttal. I just want to let the commission know that we have been speaking with the neighbors. We are trying to balance, obviously, their privacy concerns and the health and safety concerns of the future residents. So we are still in conversation and are trying to work towards an amicable solution. So just want to also point out that there will be window treatments. Pardon me. There will be window treatments. There will be some very tall trees planted. Obviously, those take time to grow and mature. So I just wanted to add those details in, but we will be continuing to work with the neighbors that we've spoken with to try to alleviate some of those concerns. And besides that, I think I agree with some of the other sentiment that we want to hurry up and get going. So hopefully we can get approval today and then go to City Council and get approval there. So thank everybody for spending their evening with us to discuss this great project.
Okay, thank you very much. Steve, we now close the public hearing. Any other steps?
No, it would move into the deliberation by the Complete Streets Commission and then their vote, and then the Planning Commission and their vote.
Okay, we will turn it back over to Complete Streets.
Thank you very much. So commissioners, this is our opportunity to deliberate and take our vote. We've had ample opportunity to ask questions of staff and the applicant. So I hope that our deliberation will be brief. And I am, as soon as anyone's ready, also willing to entertain a motion. Anyone have anything? Vice Chair?
Thank you, Chair. I just had a couple of comments. Just wanted to follow up with my questions, and primarily to do with parking and the amount of bike parking as well. If you look at the newer Vta guidelines, there are some indications that the recommendations for a project like this, especially for apartments, has been increased significantly, and I think there are good reasons for why that was done. So my recommendation, I urge the developer to take the recommendations from the VTA seriously and see what else, how much more can you provide? Because even if we have 90 parking spaces, it's inevitable that some parking will overflow, and a mitigating factor could be increased bike parking. If I'm not mistaken, I think the VTA guidelines call for a minimum of 1 bike parking per unit, and a recommendation goal for 1 per bedroom. So there's a significant change from where it was before, and there's some good reason for it. And it's just a recommendation that the developer look to see if it's possible to increase that further. And second is regarding EVs, and again to see if you can find funding sources to get going with some amount of some additional EV1 level charging possible in some of the parking spaces. It's again mitigating, given the fact that there's an affordable housing unit development. I think it only is appropriate that you try to do what you can to increase the number of EV parkings available. And the last thing I wanted to say was there is the Distal Drive is actually on the suggested school routes for all 3 schools. That is the Los Altos High School, Egan, and Almond Elementary. And the expectation is that bike traffic, especially this and pedestrian traffic from the development, from the project to the schools, will primarily go through Distal Drive. And I think this was related to the question that Commissioner Malouf had originally pointed to. And I think it's important that you take that into consideration and think about the parking there as well. And the fact that that's on it's on the suggested school routes also points to the fact that we may see increased need for bike parking in the facility for students commuting to school. Beyond that, I did not have any specific points, so they were just my recommendations. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Appreciate that. And I think these are things that we can certainly ask the applicant to consider, but I think none of these are in the realm of things we can require them to do. And I support what you've raised, and the VTA bike parking guidelines are new, and we would encourage anyone doing a project in Los Altos to have a look at those. Other commissioners or anyone with a motion? Commissioner Malouf.
Yeah, I mean, I want to follow up on what the Vice Chair said. And while the project limits what we can ask of the applicants, I believe the city has an obligation to look into the infrastructure needs around projects of this size. And so I would strongly recommend for the city to consider adding a bike lane and looking perhaps at extending the sidewalk where the project's responsibilities would end. We cannot just simply build the sidewalk and leave it unfinished on the other end of it. The city has to pick up that obligation and understand what needs to be done. As we consider putting more projects, high density projects along the El Camino corridor, and this is one example of them, we need to think about what are the infrastructure needs for multimodal transportation. We've considered the cars, but I don't think we're really putting enough effort into the pedestrian and the bike responsibilities for those projects. So again, this is perhaps for a future discussion, but the city, I would recommend for the city to consider these things and come back to us for some ideas.
Thank you, Commissioner Maloof. Certainly would agree. And I think that also the adoption of the VMT policy by the council that this commission has already reviewed will help as well, because I think with that we have some worksheets that have transportation demand management and other solutions in there, and including things like extending sidewalks, not just adjacent in your property. So we would encourage the city to get the VMT policy adopted that this commission has recommended to the council. Commissioner Katz, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. I agree with my two predecessor commissioners in that I think the city needs to step up here because we can't require it of the developer. I think this project is well needed and it should go forward. But if you think about the next door neighbor, which is the Palo Alto Medical Foundation, and all of the traffic that goes in and out of there, both to the lab and to the other services that go on there, I think a bike lane is absolutely in order, and completing the sidewalk is as well. And so I would encourage the city to take a look at that in conjunction with the completion of the development.
Commissioner Ouyang, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay, thank you. So I will just say certainly that there's a need for affordable housing, and this is a city-led project along with the county, and we appreciate the partnership of the county. I think it's important to move this project forward. We, from a transportation perspective, do not, the laws are not such now that in the transportation infrastructure is being fully built out across all modes to support the housing that is going in. But I think in terms of the project, it does meet the requirements that it needs to, and appreciate staff's giving us more information about the major transit stops. I think that's information we hadn't had all those details in the past, so appreciate you sharing that this evening. So if no one is going to make a motion, I can go ahead and do it. I move that we approve this project, recommended to the Planning Commission and the City Council, accepting all the staff recommendations, including the transportation analysis, the public works recommendations, as well as the request to require that the bike room has EV chargers in it. And I see the city attorney has her hand up. You may want my wording to be stated a little differently.
No, but what about the proposed changes to the conditions of approval with the affordable units and something else that they propose? Are you going to accept those changes as well?
I believe those changes are not transportation related. So I think we would leave that to the Planning Commission.
All right. Good call. Good call. I want to make sure it gets in the motion, one of the motions, one or both. Okay. I'll be quiet now.
And we have Radha with your hand up.
Hi, City Attorney Yuli and the Chair. Condition number 30, 32, and 33 are transportation related because they're referring to sidewalk improvements in the frontage of Distal Circle. Those might be required to modify to specify that it is for Distal Circle's facade. Like frontage.
Correct. And if I'm not mistaken, Radha, those were the public works
Correct. Those are
Okay.
Public Works conditions of approval.
Yeah.
30.
So I
32.
included in my motion the Public Works conditions of approval, which I think you had enumerated on your slide, and I've just now enumerated for us.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to clarify. Sorry. Thanks.
Yeah. And while it's not in my motion, I assume that the applicant has heard the additional feedback from the public, and I think also some commissioners that raised it, is the access path to the bike locker room. So is there a second for the motion?
I will second.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Maloof. And let's do a roll call vote. Vice Chair.
Yes.
Commissioner Katz.
Yes.
Commissioner Maloof.
Yes.
Commissioner Oyang.
Yes.
And myself, yes. So that passes 5-0. We have 2 members absent. And I think, as was discussed before, we just joined this meeting. For those of you who want to stay, you're welcome to listen into the rest of the Planning Commission deliberations in their meeting. You can also turn your videos off, or you're also welcome to retire for the evening. Appreciate your participation this evening.
Thank you.
Okay, back to us. Thank you very much to the Complete Streets Commission. Who from the Planning Commission would like to make a comment?
Well, I'll jump in.
Okay, thanks, Richard.
First of all, I'd like to commend the developer on the changes to the bays and the use of the colors. I think in the wood, I think it's a big improvement. I was impressed. We covered the bike issue, the access. The gentleman that made the comment about maybe a sliding door as you go into the bike locker room, maybe that's something that's feasible. The concern with the neighbors, I've driven around the project a number of times. I can understand their concern. They are set back, and there's some big trees along the back of the nearby, the adjacent office building. But I can see we're on the 5th floor. There could be, looking to the single-story houses. I'm glad to hear that the EAH is working with the neighbors on that issue. Maybe you can frost the windows on the upper story on the 5th floor. That would maybe help something. But whatever you can do to work with the neighbors as you're doing is very good, very appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Anybody like to go next?
I can go.
Thanks, Maris.
Yeah, I really appreciate the modifications that were made with the architecture since the last meeting. I think the building has significantly improved since then. And I especially like the changes on the elevation on Distal Drive. I'm also, completely fine with the design waivers that are being requested. I think this project is a really good example of a development where we can see the objective design standards in action, and we can see kind of what's working and what may need to evolve or adapt, whether that's based on physical limitations like the courtyard being above street level, or just adding more acceptable materials like for the base. So I just hope the waivers don't become a sticking point when it goes to council. And that was it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Maris.
I'll jump in. I'm excited by this project. I appreciate that the changes that were made in terms of the varying or adding a bay and then varying its width, and then updating the colors. I think that they are an improvement from what we saw last time. And I do also like the wood composite accents. And so one of the concessions about allowing wood at the ground floor doesn't even feel to me like a concession, because it's actually quite aesthetically pleasing in my mind. And I'm also just generally supportive. I think I think it's clear to me that we should support this and the concessions and allowances. And I also totally understand the concerns of the neighbors. And I wonder, since there are conversations happening with respect to the, for example, the trees that are going to be put on the perimeter, you know, whether you put something that is a 24-inch box versus a 48-inch box can make a difference. I mean, a 48-inch box tree can already be 15 feet, which I understand isn't going to help with something that is 5 stories tall. But if the neighbors research and have preferences with respect to, you know, varietals or faster growing trees, they should definitely provide that input, because in my mind, that will best help them retain some of their privacy, and also consider starting to put those fast growing hedges on their side in the few years they have between now and construction. So I think this project is moving forward as it should. And I just want to observe that in like the 2 terms and many, many years I've been on commission, I've never actually seen a report that's 2,483 pages. And so I'm not sure what that was about, but it's not lost on me that that is for the project that is entirely affordable. And so I do wonder what obstacles we are putting in front of these projects that require such voluminous presentation to get past.
Thank you. Commissioner Merrick?
I think the project looks fine. It doesn't seem like, you know, I'm like mindful that it doesn't feel as if there's much room for us to weigh in beyond that. And so I think that given the limitations of what we can do, I think it looks fine. I agree with Commissioner Bodner that that the neighbors, you know, concerns should be taken seriously. And I think her proposals are as good as they can be to try to find the way forward with that. But otherwise, I think it seems like it's going to go forward.
Thank you. Eric?
I managed to unmute myself. Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think it's a spectacular project. As Nick said, it is a unique project and is likely to remain that way for some time. My concerns are not with the project, but rather with the way it was presented. And I'm going to have a couple of things to say about that, but I am fully in favor of this project. I think it's great, and I don't want anything that I say to reflect on the project itself. I think EAH has been spectacular, and I would hope that we could find some way to work with them again on another project. Just a small technical suggestion. In the list of concessions, they suggested eliminating the 10-foot upper story step back. That sounds to me more like a waiver issue than a concession issue. And I mentioned that because the use of the wood is a base material, which is listed as a waiver, sounds to me more like a concession. So my recommendation would be just to swap those two. I think it makes more sense that they be in those lists. I think this project stands on its own and doesn't need this, I'm going to say, nonsense about the major transit stop. It'll have 165% density bonus, and that's great. I think that there will be 5 votes on the council for it. There should be 7 votes on this commission for it, just that way. Just that way. With these 4 concessions and the 3 waivers, and if they can come up with another one, great. Okay, and the 165% density bonus, period. Okay, that's my view. And I want, can I share my screen for 15 seconds with you? Steve, I don't know if I know how to do this. If I hit share my screen, what does that do?
And then you need to select the screen and then hit OK again, I think.
So if I come here and hit share, okay. Let's see. How do I do that? Let's see. I think it wants me to open system preferences. Sorry, I have never done this before.
Eric, maybe you can tell us what's on your screen.
No, it's a picture. I have to show a picture. I think I have to add. Hang on.
Okay, well, how about I give my comments?
Yeah, you go ahead and I'll
while you
work this
while you
out.
work
Yeah.
on the technical issues.
Yeah.
I too want to echo the comments of my fellow commissioners. I think it's a great project. I'm thrilled that we're doing something like this in Los Altos, and really applaud the county city partnership and with the nonprofits to get this done. I think you did a great job of listening to our comments from January. I know the bike situation still could use some improvement, but I think it's vastly improved from the January proposal. I like the mass timber look. I would again encourage you, like everybody else has, to please continue to work with the neighbors to figure out a good way to make the burden on them a little less. I have some concerns about taking out the different kinds of units that are required, but I can live with that one. So I am in favor of this project as stated, with the request by the applicant for the changes they need and the conditions of approval. Okay, got it, Eric?
Okay. No, because I would have to restart that. I'd have to get out and restart, and I'm not going to do that. So I'll tell you what the pictures are, and I'll be happy to show them to anybody. The pictures are of the stop in front of Whole Foods, which is the one that's talking about. The only buses that stop there are the 22 and the 522. The 40 doesn't stop there. The 40 stops back by where Chef Chu's is, because it comes around the corner from San Antonio on the El Camino Real, has to make a left at Showers, and you can't make a left from in front of Whole Foods right there. So it is not, I repeat, not the intersection of two major bus lines. Also, the 40 isn't a major bus line. I point this out because I am concerned that the careless and sloppy way that this was done, and I'm not blaming anybody because a lot of people were involved, maybe because of the 165% density bonus. I don't know. That's why I want to point out that this project by itself, just as it is a worthy project and should get everybody's vote. And it didn't need this. And to get to Ronit's point about the thousands of pages, it didn't need to do that. And I don't think it was necessary. And I really am upset for the integrity of the system. I think it's a great project. I think we should be already building it, but I don't want to see it done this way. I just don't want to see it done this way. Okay, I will vote for the project because it's a great project. I considered voting against it just as a protest, but I'm not going to do that. I think it's a wonderful project. I think it should go to the council. I just wish it were properly presented.
Okay, thank you. Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll be happy to make the motion.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm going to move that project D22-0002 and along with it CUP 22-0001 be approved by this commission and referred to the council with an enthusiastic recommendation that the council vote for it. With all of the additions that were already approved by the Complete Streets Commission, I think we should ratify those. And we should also then include any, which I've forgotten, any of the other things that may have come up, and Jolie will remind us what those are if there are any. But yes. Okay.
And that you want to make the determination that the project is exempt from CEQA.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And CEQA has nothing to do with the major transit stop. That's another point I will argue some other time. Okay. But yes, that would be it's a messy thing, but it's the motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Great. Thank you. Steve, you want to do a roll call?
Sure. Sorry, was the second Commissioner Roche?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Bodnar?
I'm in favor, yes.
Commissioner Ahi?
Yes.
Commissioner Merrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Roche?
Yes, let's start tomorrow.
Commissioner Steinle?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Mensinger?
Yes.
That passes 6-0.
Great. Thank you to all the applicant and the public for their patience in a fairly long hearing. I think we're now to commissioners' reports and comments. Are there any for tonight? Okay, moving on. I think then potential future agenda items. Steve, anything you want to alert us to?
Your next meeting would be September 1st, I believe. Yeah. And it looks like that meeting, based on tonight's actions, I don't believe we have anything scheduled. So that one will be likely canceled. And we're pretty light for kind of the start of the fall. So we do have a couple other multifamily projects coming in, but not quite ready for the commission yet. And so that's all I have right now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And we'll send out a notice to commissioners just to make them aware that we've officially canceled the next meeting. And then also to remind that your meeting October 6th, those commissioners that are appointed by new commissioners appointed by the council would be seated on October 6th.
Okay, great, thank you. I think that is it, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Night.
meeting.